I'm excited to be here. I think both of us are. We've been thinking about this for months, and we're absolutely excited to be talking about international business expansion. I'm from California, and I'm really excited to be here in Ukraine. This is my 4th trip here.
And I'm from Ukraine, and I live in California. This is my first time in 15 years since I came back to Ukraine.
So I was born and raised in Silicon Valley. There I helped build 4 $1 billion companies. These are the exits that I had, each over $1 billion. LSI Logic built the electronic design automation industry. CQ built the digital video industry. And AtRoad built fleet tracking. So every time you see Waze or any one of the fleet tracking things or automotive tracking, I was part of the team that invented that technology. Went into venture capital straight away. From that, we were the big money into TiVo, Netflix, Juniper Networks. From that, I went into government. So I worked for the Canadian government. I'm not Canadian, but I helped Canadians build bridges to Silicon Valley. And now I do that for about 20 countries worldwide, including Ukraine. And now I have the privilege of being an educator. So I teach entrepreneurship and innovation at UC Berkeley, and I also teach at Northeastern University.
And I'm originally from Ukraine, Lugansk. I moved in 15 years ago to California. And since I speak Russian, I was asked to present in Russian. But, пожалуйста, извините меня за ошибки или грамматические, или какие-нибудь. И, наверное, половину терминов я все-таки буду говорить по-английски. Надеюсь, что вы будете понимать. Но я с удовольствием, конечно, буду представлять на русском языке. С тех пор, когда уехала, работала в Стэнфорде, в Силиконовой долине, и после этого основала несколько компаний. Последняя компания называется Artveoli, это в hardware space. Мы делаем воздухоочистительные приборы. И также я работаю с Риком вместе в Northeastern University, и дополнительно менторю и работаю с разными организациями globally, международными организациями, как Global Social Benefit Institute, которая фокусируется на предпринимателей social entrepreneurship space, и также европейские организации, как European Innovation Academy, которые поддерживают предпринимателей со всего мира, чтобы расти и продвинуть свои компании на рынке.
Yes. Thanks. And we'll be together in Portugal, the European Innovation Academy, this year around. So yes. We'll see you there.
See you.
So our topic for today is going international. And here's our agenda. So we're going to talk a little bit about why you would want to go international, what the issues are, what the risks are in going outside of Ukraine, strategies for doing that, some examples of great Ukrainian companies that have already done that, expanded internationally. Some discussion about how you would fund that, and then if you choose to use Silicon Valley as a launch pad, the pluses and minuses of doing so. And then at the end, we're going to have an open Q&A, so we're hopeful to save 10 or 15 minutes for that.
Да, и так как мы здесь для вас, мы хотим принять ваши вопросы, пожалуйста, пишите ваши вопросы на Telegram-бот, и в конце презентации некоторые вопросы, которые наше жюри выберет, мы постараемся на всех на них ответить. Так что, пожалуйста, присылайте вопрос на Telegram-бот, и в конце мы сделаем бродкаст этих вопросов и будем отвечать в прямом эфире. Thank you.
Well, so Ukraine, a great place to start. So a strong work ethic, very entrepreneurial as a people, strong ties to both the East and the West, strong education in terms, especially for engineering, a great community. I mean, look at this community here. And then access to great resources, SME School, Unit City, among others. And we're going to talk about resources towards the end. But Ukraine is what people would consider to be a medium-sized market. About 45 million people, typically a natural resource-based economy moving into technology in other areas. Medium-sized GDP, 370 billion. That compares to 3 trillion for California. About 8,800 per capita. But the population growth is slowing. There's some issues with inflation rates, interest rates, and so on. So along those lines, we're going to talk about what are the opportunities, what are the challenges, and then how can you make this happen?
So Rick, let me ask you this question. If you're doing well in Ukraine, why would you want to go international? Why do you want to expand?
Oh, basically, there's bigger opportunities. As soon as you break out beyond the borders of Ukraine, your company can grow larger. There's also some challenges with potential competition within Ukraine, and as soon as you go outside the borders, maybe your product or service can be more accepted, more unique, more different outside of here. And so, as you're looking to become a global company and growing Ukraine into a global economy, it's just natural to try to think about what you can do outside of the borders. So I'm going to go through a little bit of what a classic startup looks like. And we'll talk a little bit about tools and how we think about this in Silicon Valley. This is a diagram we call the Valley of Death. And it describes sort of the journey of an early stage startup. So you can see this represents overall cumulative profit and loss, and you can see it runs in stages. So the first slope up through product launch is when you're doing product development. You're spending money on R&D, on customer discovery, on trying to figure out what it is exactly you're going to build to the point where you launch your product. Then the curve takes another dip in the slope as you're starting to spend money on marketing and sales and get out there. Eventually, your marketing and sales efforts may pay off and you're going to get cash flow break even, and at the end, you're turning the corner. And then once you turn the corner, you can go ahead and launch into a profitable phase and then cross over the line where you reach cumulative cash flow break even. The area under the curve is the amount of money that you need to raise. So this is a classic startup. Now, some of you may have cash flow businesses where you don't go through this dip, but if you're doing product development that requires expenses, expect things to look like this. So how do you manage that kind of a curve? This is the way we do product development in Silicon Valley. This is called the customer development method, often called the Steve Blank method for the gentleman that authored this capability. And it goes in 4 phases. So the first one is problem solution. Note that it's not an idea. We don't typically start with a thing that you're building. You know, you build something and then you try to see whether the market needs it. What we're trying to do is to identify problems that your customers may have. Because what you're ultimately doing is you're solving their problems through some sort of a product or service. Once you identify problems, then you come up with a solution. That is called customer discovery. Once you do that, there's a product market fit. Once you do that, then we worry about business model. Once you do that, then there's a change in the overall culture of the company from search to execution. Let me explain this in a bit more detail. So problem solution is something where you're trying to identify a problem that customers have. This is your guess as to what you think your customers need. But there's a need to prove that. And we do that through the scientific method, through a method of experimentation. So what that means is you come up with a hypothesis, much like in science, you come up with a hypothesis of what you think the customer needs, what their problems are, and you design a series of experiments. You ask specific questions to customers, wondering exactly what a day in their life is like, what their needs are, and if you nail it, and you talk to enough customers that you get statistical significance. If you nail that, then you think you may have a problem worth solving. Once you think you have a problem worth solving, then you come up with a solution that actually then solves that problem, and you do the same thing. You then start to show them your product, and this is something we call a minimum viable product, a prototype, a demonstration, something you can put in their hands so that they have the ability to validate whether this is actually then a product that's worth building. So unless you have the problem nailed and a strong solution nailed, you're not really ready to go on. The nice thing here is that these experiments can be done easily and cheaply. So around where we are, we do this multiple times. And in fact, in our classes that we have, we require our students to ask at least 50 to 100 customers as to what they're doing in terms of what their problem is and what the solution might be. So we really work on the foundation of problem solution, and again, it can be done simply and cheaply. Once you have a product that's worth building, then how do you bring that to market? This is called product market fit. So that product, how are you going to price it? How are you going to sell it? How are you going to deliver it to your customers? What sort of sales channels are you going to use? All those kinds of sales and marketing activities are something that we call customer validation. You can do the same thing. You can decide what your channels are or your pricing is and run individual experiments on those to try to identify what the optimal solutions are in order to get something we call a repeatable and sustainable sales process. What this means is that you're not selling something on an individual basis to individual customers and customizing solutions all along. You're finding something that's a strong product with a good market that you're able to sell and turn over to a sales channel so that they can do it and grow rapidly. The growth phase is called customer creation. So this is when you're trying to establish a business model so that you can then take the product and ramp it up into its next phase. The first two phases for us are typically self-funded. In other words, you will not find external capital that's willing to fund just a simple idea or willing to fund your experiments to try to get to market. What they want to do is they want to fund that growth phase that's going all the way through. So this is where a business model goes, and we're trying to establish the company to the point where it's able to achieve rapid and scalable growth. Once you're in the phase of rapid and scalable growth with potentially outside funding, then you're ready for company building. The first three phases are search. You're running experiments, you're trying to figure things out, you're pivoting. Pivoting means changing direction until everything settles back down. And now you're ready for execution. So execution is the thing called company building, where you're hiring en masse, you're getting everything going, and this is the point at which you can think about maybe expanding internationally. This is a cultural change. So you go from searching into execution. And a lot of startups have people that are the startup people, the startup team that gets everything ready, and then you have the execution team that takes things over. So those are the 4 steps. And the reason we introduce this is because we're going to talk about this when we deal with international business expansion. But you should also use this technique for any new product development that you're considering within your company. So right in the middle, where I talked about this growth, we often call that a scale-up. So a scale-up has its own unique challenges. So what's happening here is that you as a CEO can probably sell to innovators. These are your friends, your partners, your existing customers, people willing to try things out. And then maybe you're able to sell to a few early adopters, but trying to get into the majority is very difficult. And this is called a chasm or a gap. And this is the challenge, and this is the point at which many startups fail or many new products or services fail. And this is the point at which often takes quite a bit of money in order to scale that gap. We're also going to talk about that.
So Rick, this is very useful information for companies to start off with product developments, but what are specifics or what are mechanics of going international?
Well, let's talk a little bit about that, because I gave you theory, right? So first off, have a strong base in your home market. So make sure that everything's stable here before considering going internationally. Have your adequate financial and management resources. In other words, have enough money in the bank or have enough cash flow going, and have a team built up so that you have a stable platform upon which to build. So the objective is not to kill your company while you're trying to expand. So because going into brand new territory is like doing a brand new startup. So you want your company to be stable before you move outside of the country and try to do something different. Mm-hmm. So we recommend taking a look at low-risk opportunities first. You want to minimize your variables. So you don't necessarily want to take a big leap and go to some place where you've never been before. So low-risk opportunities might be one of two things. It could be one of your neighbors here, where the geography is in your favor. So, Poland, Moldova, Belarus, and so on. You could also look at specifically Russian-speaking countries, so you minimize sort of the language barrier overall. So you can take your existing marketing materials and your existing websites and everything else and translate that over into just a different geography. But ultimately, what you want to do is to grow into, as you're growing into a global company, those countries are interesting and good trials, but you want to grow into US, EU, India, China, places with large population base, large GDPs, and so on. And probably, depending on your strategy, take them on one at a time, or if you're really ambitious, all at once, but you have to be ready to do so. So Alina,
Yes.
I've talked a little bit about mechanics, but what can go wrong with expansion?
Well, that's a very good question because a lot of things can go wrong with expansion. Для начала, то, что Рик говорит, когда вы идете в новый маркет, в новые сегменты, очень много риска и просто вещей, которые вы не знаете, что может произойти. Самое первое, когда вы работаете с новыми кастомерами, вы не знаете, какая культура может быть, если это язык другой. Но вот по поводу конкретного customer discovery процесса, может быть, простые вещи, как поведение. Что-то они делают, что-то не так, вот, которое вы сейчас делаете. Потому что вы знаете своих кастомеров, которые у вас сейчас на вашем рынке. Когда вы идете на другие рынки, вы не знаете этих кастомеров. И вам нужно пройти через вот эти вот процессы от customer discovery, чтобы минимизировать этот риск. И иногда просто самые даже вкусы у людей разные. Кому-то что-то нравится, кому не нравится. Культурные различия очень могут быть большие в различных сегментах. Конечно, очень сильная конкуренция. Когда вы идете в новые маркеты, вам нужно всегда смотреть, кто там конкурент. Это очень большой риск, когда вы придете на другой маркет, и там уже нету market share, то есть рынка для вас войти туда. Всегда нужно смотреть, какие там конкуренты. И очень важно, если большие бренды и репутации уже есть на рынке. Если у вас нет репутации на этом рынке, вы новый entrant, входите на рынок. Это очень большой риск, на самом деле, пока вы себя поставите на этом рынке. И очень большой point, который Рик сделал, about product market fit, это один из больших рисков, почему многие стартапы фейлят или компании не могут выходить на рынок, потому что просто нету совмещения рынка с продуктом. И продукт не поставлен для конкретного рынка. И большие компании, когда они выходят на рынок, они видят, что это очень большие риски и стараются минимизировать эти риски. Конечно, еще очень много рисков, связанных просто с operation и финансированием. Самый простой риск — это когда у вас нет ресурсов каких-то. Например, у вас нет кэш, наличных, чтобы выходить на рынок, или даже людей, которые вам могут это сделать. Конечно, кажется, вот что там, деньги есть, пошел, нанял, все сделают. Когда вы выходите на другой рынок, вам нужны люди, которые за вас это сделают, потому что у вас все равно работа есть, вам есть что делать, у вас есть люди. Вам нужно найти таких же или лучше людей, которые знают, разбираются, которым вы доверяете за вас делать бизнес в этой стране. И очень много еще рисков, связанных с инфраструктурой. Вот, к примеру, некоторые компании хотят выйти или выходят на другие рынки, в другие страны, а инфраструктуры там нету. Там или дорог нету, или Wi-Fi нету, или интернет медленный. И вот, например, если у вас сервисы связаны с тем, что должен быть high-speed интернет, а его там нету, то это вот как бы уже получаются проблемы с этим. И, конечно, когда вы уходите в другие рынки, вам нужно думать о supply chain. То есть где ваши сапплайеры, где они находятся сейчас, и где вы будете находить новых сапплайеров, откуда будет все вот это value chain продвигаться, чтобы вы доставили ваш продукт на маркет, на тот маркет. И один из больших рисков, к сожалению, это то, что от вас совершенно не зависит. То есть от правительства, экономические ситуации, они просто повышают риск для любой компании, для маленькой, для большой, международных компаний в каждой стране. И такие риски связаны с тарифами, с налогами, просто отношения между разными странами. Например, вы знаете сейчас большие проблемы US-China, tariff war, и много компаний из этого страдают. И, к сожалению, маленькие и средние бизнесы, им больше всего приходится из-за этого, потому что они очень релают на cash flow, и они не могут такие сильные, большие удары на себя принять, когда большие компании могут еще хоть как-то из этого выкрутиться. И, конечно, валютные рынки, цены, как отношение меняется с purchasing power от различных стран. Если вы зависите, тем более, от каких-то сапплайеров в других странах, это все очень важно. И некоторые еще риски, с которыми я столкнулась лично, когда я открывала subsidiary в Польше, что некоторые просто пермиты или вам нужно зарегистрироваться, много времени занимает, и времени, и денег. Мне это больше, чем что мы планировали, даже с лайерами, через все это пройти. То есть вы планируете одно, а много рисков связано с тем, что вы просто не имеете никакого контроля. И например, если вы открываете компанию, вас занимает намного долго времени, и вы тратите на это деньги, вы просто можете больше денег туда вложить, чем вы, например, хотели. That's it.
Okay.
On the general overview of what can go wrong.
Okay. So, well, then that can go wrong, but then what do you do about it? How do you mitigate these risks?
Yes, there are definitely things that you can do to lower your risks or mitigate the risks, or being aware, prepare for those events when it happens. Для начала, как Рик сказал, когда вы делаете новые проекты и хотите куда-то выйти на какой рынок, вы не вложите все деньги, что у вас есть. Как говорится, all in, вложил, это гэмбл, получится, не получится, проиграл, все, ушел в банкрот. Самое главное, чтобы вы смотрели на это, как будто это стартап. То есть у вас есть своя компания, у вас есть свои operations, доход, ваша эта компания замечательно, хорошо растет или приносит доход. Дополнительно к этому вы можете сделать, как мы называем, pilot, то это стартап, чтобы попробовать, насколько получится или не получится. Но это компания, которую будете делать, или, как мы называем иногда, стратегические инициативы, strategic initiatives. Вы это делаете на стороне, то есть вы не ставите свой бизнес под риск банкротства. Вы дополнительно открываете какие-то проекты, но ваш бизнес работает хорошо в вашем маркете. То есть эта концепция, как Рік methodology, treating стартап как пилот, как вы выходите на новый рынок, вам нужно смотреть это как будто это новый маркет, и как стартап исследовать маркет, чтобы минимизировать свои просто затраты. И много стартапов, они начинают с чего? У них мало денег, там, бутстрапают, чтобы выйти на какой-то рынок. То есть у вас это как пилот, выйти на рынок, своя компания работает, деньги есть, все замечательно. И в общем, методология, как пройти через этот процесс, как нам сделать, открыть новую или придумать новый сегмент или новую географию, куда выйти. Первым делом, конечно, нужно все проанализировать, проресерчить и найти всю информацию. Второй шаг — это нужно сделать хорошие стратегии, спланировать. То есть у вас уже есть много информации, давайте спланируем, как мы выйдем на этот рынок. Потом нужны будут деньги, нужно будет проинвестировать для этого, найти капитал и, конечно, все это execute, то есть привести план в действие. И самый, как говорится, последний шаг, нужно все это опять анализировать, reevaluate и смотреть. То есть этот пилот, этот стартап, который мы запустили, вообще работает, не работает, что нам с ним делать. Первый шаг, я немножко подробнее в это подойду, потому что каждый из этих шагов — это очень большой топик, там много часов можно об этом говорить, на очень высоком уровне. Первым делом анализируйте то, что мы говорили о market data. То есть нам нужно знать все о кастомерах, о новых кастомерах, кто они, что они делают, customer discovery, validation, весь этот процесс. А потом индустрия очень важна, потому что вам нужно знать в индустрии, в которую вы идете, что с этой индустрией в той стране. Она растет, она стабильная, то есть что вообще происходит. Есть ли там какие-то конкуренты, которые новые выходят на рынок, что они делают, что уже те конкуренты делают. И вообще какая возможность у вас на рынок выйти, сколько у вас потенциальных есть кастомеров. И для этого важно еще установить правильные, как говорится, evaluation criteria. То есть как вы правильно анализируете свой маркет, потому что для каждых сегментов будут разные характеристики маркета. И самое важное, когда вы делаете этот анализ, и особенно если вы решаете между разными странами, вам нужно принять вот эти вот критерии, почему этот маркет лучше, чем этот. И это должно быть не просто интуитивно, вот мне кажется, вот это должна быть хорошая opportunity, вот мы поэтому туда пойдем. А установить четкие критерии, почему вот этот маркет. Туда легко войти, там большая market share, там мало конкурентов, там уже сапплайеры на месте, или там, то есть вот все вот эти критерии нужно, как говорится, найти, проанализировать и сравнить. Почему выходить в Польшу лучше, чем выходить в Беларусь, или выходить сразу на Соединенные Штаты в маркет, или ехать в Чайну, в Китай. То есть вот эти все маркеты должны быть проанализированы, и вы потом уже должны выбрать, куда пойти. Почему? Потому что вы это сделали уже, как говорится, всю эту работу. И для того, чтобы часть вот этого вот анализа вам нужно сделать, как называется, key performance characteristics, то есть что у вас в компании, как говорится, драйвит ваш доход, ваши деньги. Например, если у вас какие-то cost drivers или revenues drivers зависимы от правительства или партнеров или от чего-то другого, это все как бы увеличивает, но может и митигировать ваши риски. И второй какой большой степ, когда вы уже реально вот вы сделали все анализ, у вас есть дата, вот этот рынок, теперь конкретно, что вам нужно делать, как вы будете туда выходить. Если это стартапы, как пилот, конкретно, хорошо, давайте уставим, какие таймлайн, какой скоп, что мы хотим сделать вот при вот этом, как говорится, пилоте, которую мы делаем. И, кстати, вот эти пилоты могут быть от нескольких месяцев до нескольких лет, в зависимости от вашего сегмента. Если вы в agribusiness, то вам нужно как минимум 2 урожая, чтобы собрать урожай, чтобы посмотреть, как все прошло. Если вы больше в финтех или в каких-то других сервис-провайдерс, вы можете несколько месяцев, чтобы попробовать кастомеров и понять, работает или не работает. Конечно, очень важно, чтобы у вас были очень четкие success criteria. То есть, что ваш пилот вам покажет. То есть, что вы хотите узнать о кастомеров или о маркете, и что будет success этого пилота. И конкретно потом сделать уже operations and financing план, какие ресурсы вам для этого нужны. То есть, сколько денег надо, сколько человек. И вот часть вот этого плана, когда вы это стратегически делаете, вы смотрите, так, мы сделали анализ, у нас вот этот план есть. Нам это займет $5 миллионов и 35 тысяч человек. Не пойдет. Значит, не делаем. Заново пересматривайте рынок и анализируйте, какие другие маркеты, какие другие варианты есть. Проанализировали, ага, нам 10 тысяч, 5 человек, маркет можно найти, давайте делаем. То есть это уже решение, делать или не делать вот с этим пилотом конкретным. И, конечно, когда вы уже знаете, сколько вам денег надо, следующее вам нужно, чтобы у вас капитал для этого был. И капитал или внутренний, например, со своего бизнеса, у вас есть какой-то доход, вы его отложили, вы можете эти деньги взять, проинвестировать. И еще вы можете, конечно, пойти где-то привлечь деньги с наружного капитала. And Rick will talk about the different funding options from the outside capital. 4-й степ очень важный, это execute. То есть вам всю эту домашнюю работу сделали, все это подготовили, нашли деньги, замечательно, давайте теперь делать. К сожалению, не все всегда пойдет по плану, к этому нужно быть готовым. Потому что очень много разных вариантов, что может пойти, план A, план B, план C. Но главное, чтобы у вас был mindset, что будут вещи, которые вы не знали, будут вещи, которые пойдут не так, как вы планировали, и вам нужно что-то делать. То есть вам нужно быть проактивным и agile, как это говорится, чтобы у вас объектив идти на рынок, чтобы его узнать. У вас нужно как можно больше данных с этого пилота собрать. И, конечно, чтобы у вас, когда вы сделали вот эти evaluation критерия для пилота, вы собираете все эти данные, как пилот проходит, и смотрите, как вообще, вот вы планировали вот такие данные на marketing sales, другая метрика приходит. То есть очень важно в процессе пилота keeping track of the metrics, метрика, которую вы поставите, и смотреть, насколько вы делаете. И последний шаг — это reevaluate. То есть, хорошо, прошел год. Вот мы на год планировали, проинвестировали, все это сделали. Прошел год. Теперь у нас есть. Нужно смотреть, что нам этот пилот нам сказал, что нам сделал, что у нас вообще получилось, не получилось. Потом, что мы будем после этого делать? Пойдем мы дальше, больше денег будем влаживать или будем расширяться в другие страны, идти глобал. И, конечно, легко, когда все очень хорошо, замечательно, пилот очень successful, тогда мы знаем, что нам туда идти. И, конечно, проще, если у нас вообще ничего не получилось, деньги прогорели, и как бы тоже закрываемся, не расширяемся, идем в другой рынок. И самое тяжелое решение — это когда у вас что-то получилось, что-то не получилось, вроде что-то есть, какие-то деньги сделали, но неизвестно, идти или не идти. И вот это решение вам нужно смотреть с той точки зрения, что опять вам нужно сравнивать, как все, sunk cost, вы потратили эти деньги, и сравнивайте свои investment opportunity по сравнению с другими. То есть вы делаете решение, принимаете опять заново, смотреть, ага, вот этот рынок нам сделал столько, сколько может нам сделать другой рынок. То есть это очень важно смотреть, как принимать решения с инвестициями после каждого пайлота, смотреть больше вперед. И, конечно, учиться. Если вещи, которые вы знаете, вы можете поменять или сделать по-другому, то, конечно, это будет минимизировать ваш риск. So this is a general overview of what you could do, Rick. So could you please tell us, how could you fund the expansion?
Sure.
Where'd you get money?
Yeah, I just wanted to emphasize the point about the scary part of being in the middle. So again, it's easy when you're successful, it's easy when you're not successful, but there's this middle ground. So never look at what your sunk costs were, the fact that you spent all this money, and so now you have to go forward. Take a look at where you are now and what will happen for the next year and how much money you have to reinvest. So take a look at it, not as sunk costs, but as funding going forward. So funding's super important, and let me talk a little bit about how to fund your expansion. There's a bunch of ways to do it. You could spend the money to go ahead and set up something outside of the country, much as you started your own company from scratch to start with. You can take some of the profits from your existing operation and set those aside and go ahead and think about expanding. If you have a profitable business, maybe you can get a bank loan and to go ahead and take that money and put it into the new business. You might be able to get some government grants, either from Ukraine or more likely from the destination country. So if you're going to Poland or Belarus, they might have programs where you can go ahead and tap into government resources. And then the last one, that's classic Silicon Valley, is equity investment. Selling off some shares in the company and using those proceeds to go ahead and do that. You can sell shares in the current company, or you might be able to sell shares in the subsidiary, the other company that you're setting up in the other country. So this is the way that typical equity funding is done. And this is a Silicon Valley model, but I think it's very typical in Europe and other places worldwide. So when you're in the customer discovery mode, when you're there starting off, nobody's necessarily going to fund you just when you're coming up with an idea. So we call that phase the 4 F's: friends, founders, family, and fools. So that's you. That's in Silicon Valley mode, it's you maxing out your credit card, maybe selling your RV, doing something along those lines, finding your rich uncle and borrowing some money. But it's something where you believe in what it is you're doing and you're ready to go ahead and sacrifice yourself to move things forward. We don't have the luxury of government grants in the US, and so this is what we have to do. You may be able to join an accelerator. So most countries have a few accelerators. Some of them provide funding. Accelerators are interesting because it's a place where you can land. It's not for everybody. So if you have, a small factory that you have to set up or something like that, maybe you're not eligible. But if you have a technology product or some software, something along those lines, accelerators are absolutely interesting, and I'll show you a list in a minute. But accelerators are some place where you can land, you can develop a community, you can tap into resources, and you might be able to get some funding. If you have a hardware-based product like this, you might be able to join one of the crowdfunding platforms. So Indiegogo or Kickstarter, things along those lines, you can pre-sell your product. You put up a drawing, a diagram of what it is you're planning to do, and people might be able to buy it in advance if it's interesting enough, and provide funding that way. Then you get into sort of the more speculative, typical equity financing modes. So the first one's angels. Most places have a small and growing angel community. Angels are non-professional investors. So I'm an angel. I don't do it for a living, but I take some of my resources and I have a little bit of real estate, a little bit of stocks and bonds, and also I put some of that money into startups. So a lot of places do that, and Ukraine has a small angel community as well. So these are people that are willing to invest both time and money in your startup. Silicon Valley, this is a primary way to go ahead and get funding, but you could look to tap into that. If you've got something that's exciting or super interesting to a community, seek out the angels or angel groups there. And then lastly, there's venture capital. But venture capital really only comes in a little bit later in the game. It comes in when you're in growth phase, when the risk is a little bit lower, and over time, actually, venture capital's moved out into later and later stages. So why don't we talk a little bit about some Ukrainian companies on the global market, like who's out there already?
Yes, I'll be happy to. And there are a lot of examples to cover, but there's just a few that I wanted to emphasize that I personally came across some. So for one interesting thing that I didn't know before, but Ukrainian fashion is picking up on global market. And if any of you know, in US, there's one of the biggest chains, Nordstrom. It's a high-end apparel. We actually have designers having competitively, it's a very highly competitive space. So they have space in Nordstrom's in the United States. So living in Silicon Valley, I can go out and buy Ukrainian clothes. And in fact, today they're noting that having the brand made in Ukraine actually sells. So people paying more and more attention of what is made in Ukraine. And the good thing is that when you have this brand reputation that something is good in that country, it's better for you because you're coming out with your business and you have this, we're Ukrainian, we're made in Ukraine, people, oh, that's a good, brand. It's like something made in Germany. Like, okay, well, it's gotta be good because it's made in Germany. So it's having a strong brand actually good for everyone. And I just realized I switched to English. Конечно, очень большой сектор в Украине, который очень сильно развивается и продолжает развиваться, с очень большими плеерами в Украине, которые продают по всему миру. Очень интересно, что Украина называется breadbasket of Europe, то есть Украина кормит Европу. И всем этому известно. Что мне интересно, я могу сейчас пойти в Whole Foods, это один из самых таких распространенных магазинов, которые ориентированы на органические продукты, я могу пойти туда и купить украинскую гречку. И это просто замечательно, потому что я выросла на гречке, и теперь мне не нужно никуда ехать, не идти, а просто зайти в магазин в Силиконовой долине и купить украинскую гречку. И самое хорошее то, что агропродукты настолько растут хорошо с Украины, что к 20 годам, к 2020 году, Украина будет просто на мировом глобальном рынке третья после Бразилии и Соединенных Штатов. То есть это просто замечательно. Еще одна компания интересная, это более технологический центр. Я знаю эту компанию, PetCube. Они были в Сан-Франциско, приехали, ребята молодцы, подняли venture capital деньги. Они прошли через Y Combinator. Rick will mention about that. И они, то есть очень competitive рынок, выходить с hardware-продуктом. То есть украинские компании, технологии, как говорится, successful compete на Силиконовой долине. То есть это просто приятно даже смотреть и встречать их на конференциях в Сан-Франциско. Есть также большие другие стартапы, которые продвигаются, расширяются, Grammarly, Real и Omnic. И у нас есть специальное видео от Анны которые сейчас вам расскажут, записали как раз для вас. Вот.
One more click.
Yeah.
There you go.
Всем привет! Хочу поделиться с вами двумя советами, которые в свое время помогли мне стать органичной частью Кремниевой долины. И надеюсь, что станут полезны и для вас. Совет номер 1. Измените ваше мышление от конкуренции к сотрудничеству. В Кремниевой долине, вне зависимости от того, какой навык или знание вы хотите приобрести, вы найдете сотни встреч, где шейперы индустрии из таких компаний, как Google, Facebook, Amazon, сооснователи миллиардных стартапов, будут готовы поделиться с вами своими знаниями абсолютно бесплатно. К сожалению, в Украине такой возможности у нас несколько лет назад не было. Именно поэтому, когда я вернулась, я соосновала платформу, где у людей есть возможность встречаться, делиться своими знаниями, навыками, приобретать нетворкинг. И радует тот факт, что сейчас становится все больше и больше таких инициатив, как Unit City, как то мероприятие, где мы сейчас с вами находимся, где есть возможность обогащать друг друга. Ведь именно отдавая, человек действительно может приобрести. Совет номер 2. Pay forward или плата вперед. На самом деле это целая культура, которая пронизывает ДНК Кремниевой долины. Каждый член сообщества понимает, что его успех зависит от успеха сообщества в целом. Именно этой истине нас научил профессор университета Берклі на первых же классах. Твой успех зависит от успеха студента, который сидит рядом. Это два основополагающих принципа культуры Кремниевой долины. Но на самом деле их больше, и очень сложно поделиться всеми знаниями в коротком видео. Именно поэтому я решила организовать митап студентов, выпускников университета Берклі и пригласить вас присоединиться. Если вам интересно, пожалуйста, напишите мне на e-mail, и я отправлю вам детали. Спасибо большое за возможность поделиться своими знаниями, и всего вам самого хорошего.
So actually, interesting story. Rick knows Anne very well.
Well, when she talked about professor at Berkeley, that I had the honor of being she was one of my students, and we worked on the first startup semester, which was a program where we drew international students from around the world, about 40 students, and basically put them into Berkeley and spread them all the way throughout campus for different learnings. So Anne's working on her PhD, and she's moved back here for the time being, and we still stay in contact, so she's been great. But I did want to talk a little bit about how to do business in Silicon Valley, and mostly about culture. So it's a very open business culture, and the interesting thing is we embrace international companies. Somewhere between 60 and 70% of all the CEOs of all the tech companies in Silicon Valley are foreign-born. So they're not from Silicon Valley, not from California, not from the United States, but they come in from all over the world. So these are people that couldn't necessarily do what they wanted to do in their home country, but come there to do their startups and make things happen. If you were interested in doing that, it's quite interesting because it's relatively easy to connect. So there's a huge number of events, conferences, networkings, meetups. These are all points at which you can engage with Silicon Valley. And there's a saying, basically, get out of the building. So in all the accelerators there's a big sign on the front door that says, get out of the building. They don't want you inside, they want you outside talking to customers and doing your networking. So the overall culture is not to take an idea and hold on to it and worry about people stealing it. The first thing you do when you come up with an idea is to share it and to talk to other people and to try to test that idea, to do your customer discovery and your customer validation. So a typical interaction is basically I would go up to Alina and say, hi, I'm Rick, I'm working on this and that. I have a class at Berkeley and I'm doing entrepreneurship and innovation and I'm looking for mentors and things like that. So I was wondering whether you might be eligible to do that. But I'd also be interested in what do you do?
I also mentor, but I also have a startup company in hardware space.
Cool. So that's a typical conversation. At a meetup, it happens super fast. Within a minute or two, you're trying to identify whether there's a need, an intermediary need between two people. And if not, you walk away. Thank you, very nice to meet you. But if we're able to establish trust, we exchange contact information, we follow up on the conversation, everything happens real fast. So that's interesting because what that means is you can use Silicon Valley as a place to get new customers, partnerships, great corporate connections. She mentioned Facebook and Amazon and everybody else. They have specific business development arms that are interested in finding out about you. You can do international relationships. So a lot of people go to Silicon Valley to do business in Korea or Japan or Vietnam or Australia or Latin America because all those countries have offices there as well. You can also build teams. Everybody's always looking for the next job. And it's just a culture and attitude. So it's a cool place to go and a cool place to visit. But it's not Disneyland. What does that mean? What that means is you can't just say, hey, I want to go visit Google. Hey, I want to go visit Apple. They're closed campuses. Those companies are doing business, and in a lot of cases, they're doing things that in their own mind are private and secure, so you're not going to be able to get in that. But you can build a network by doing all those conferences, meetups, networking events, and so on. You can also visit accelerators. So I mentioned accelerators earlier. And these are just some of them. You can see Silicon Valley accelerators over here. You can see other places within Europe and Asia that are over there. Accelerators are a really good place to take a look at in terms of resources and how to grow internationally. I also wanted to give you some other resources. So as you're thinking about this and doing some research on the methodology, we're just giving you a little taste of it, but there are some people that have written about how to basically grow a startup in a modern, efficient fashion. So the customer discovery methodology that I quoted right at the beginning, we've been talking about, the first book there, the Startup Owner's Manual, it's all in there. It's impossible to read. It's like an encyclopedia, about that thick, with all the individual steps, but it lays them all out in some detail. So I highly recommend you take a look at that. The simpler version of that is called the Lean Startup, but it doesn't necessarily give the same amount of richness and detail. There's another book out of MIT called The Disciplined Entrepreneur, or Disciplined Entrepreneurship. And it starts a little bit differently. It doesn't start with a problem to solve, it starts with a thing. So if you have a thing, and then it tells you about how to find the market for the thing. And it goes through 27 steps, individually, about how to do that. There's also some scale-up books. So this is the messy middle, I love the title, where you're trying to cross the chasm, which is the other title there, or traverse the traction gap, and figure that out. So these are detailed methodologies about exactly how to do that. Now we teach these, the two of us, in our classes, but you can pick these books up and take a look. And they're easy to read, there's a lot of good diagrams, they're very interesting in terms of tutorial matter. Here too, there's also a lot of resources. So obviously you have SME School, which is wonderful, thank you. Unit City, she mentioned, there's a number of different accelerators and incubators. If you wanted to take a look at things on a global basis, there's this website called F6S that's super interesting. There's some government resources. If you want to take the EU, there's a lot of resources there as well. So these are all places that are there to help. And they're in existence to try to help you grow internationally and expand, on off you go. So with that, I think we'd like to conclude our talk. Thank you very much, and we have time for Q&A. So if we can put that up, let's go through and answer your questions. If you want to ask any more questions, it's the Telegram bot.
Yeah, I think we have some.
Oh, good. Why do companies in Silicon Valley think Ukraine might be interesting for them? I can go, you can go.
Go ahead.
All right. So there's a lot of great technology in Silicon Valley. There's a lot of great deal flow, but it's not the center of it doesn't have everything. It's not the entire universe of great ideas. There's a lot of really interesting technologies that are coming in from all over the world, including Ukraine. Now, the interesting thing about Ukraine, it's in transition. So from a tech standpoint, it's largely been an outsourcing economy. You've got great engineers that are cranking away on project-based, in a project-based sense. So someone hands them a project, they work on it, they actually are very creative and improve on that, but it's a service, not necessarily products. A lot of them are converting over to product-based paradigms. And so the products that are being spun out of that, we don't know necessarily what they are, what they're going to look like. It comes from a different place, and we're really interested and curious about what might come out of here. So there are Silicon Valley venture capitalists that do come here and want to meet with you and understand what kind of new developments you're working on to maybe potentially invest in. as well as just judge the future. So that's my thought.
Yeah, I think that's about covers it. And a lot of big companies are interested in Ukraine again for the technology resources, and because you have a lot of not sales or district offices from big corporations, including Google. So there's definitely big interest in Ukraine.
And you're doing unique things in the fashion business. You're doing unique things in the agribusiness, and so we'd love to know. Next question. Cool. We had one question.
Maybe if it's not working, if anyone in the audience wants to ask a quick question while we wait.
Yes.
Скажіть, будь ласка, якими шляхами, якими методами можна шукати ангелів, венчурний капітал, інвестиції? Якісь є для цього рекомендації? Що би ви порадили таким людям, які от вже пройшли перших 2 етапи і вони хочуть розширитись шляхом пошуку?
Sure. So the question is, how would we help, or how were the resources to find angel investors or venture capitalists for someone who's already been through some steps and they're trying to find some angel or VC rounds?
Okay.
Yeah, I can start with that. So there are resources here in Ukraine, so you can look for your internal networks and organizations, and Rick mentioned some of them. We're trying to kind of look at the local resources, but they're also knowing that there are limitations, that venture capitalists in Ukraine will have different set of conditions that, for example, Silicon Valley venture capitalists. But at the same time, if you want to raise money in Silicon Valley, that needs to be part of your market, and you need to incorporate in Silicon Valley in order to raise Silicon Valley venture capital.
Yep, I totally agree. So first off, Silicon Valley is going to be interested in you in a later stage. So you have to actually be in growth mode. If you've already established a strong business here and you're looking to expand in Silicon Valley, put a subsidiary there at least. And eventually, if you do receive funding, you may have to move headquarters and have a subsidiary here. But you could also take a look, not necessarily Silicon Valley. I mean, yes, it's huge. It's 40% of the US base in terms of investment. But London, Berlin also have very strong and growing venture capital centers. So start here. If you're not necessarily able to get traction here, then there are other locations around the world where you can go. But again, later stage. So maybe start with an accelerator. Yeah.
Yeah, and look for alternative non-equity investment as well. If you can find some grants, European Union, they have a lot of grants. If your European Union is your market, then you might see if there are opportunities to get some non-dilutive cash flow, which is amazing if you can get that in the beginning.
We have another question?
Yes, we have another question. How to compete with China on manufacturing in Ukraine? And it's about mentality of regular people.
Okay.
So I can start with general overview of the China-Ukraine competition. Again, a lot of times when we talk about manufacturing or from suppliers, what comes the first thing in place is the quality and price, right? Well, speed too, because things in China move very fast, they're very cheap, but not always good quality. So when you have those things in place and when you're establishing your company and your brand, you need to see how you're going to move those pieces. And maybe some parts you can pull from China, working with China to bring the cost down. But initially, before you move to China, maybe you can have some products developed in Ukraine, and then you do cost optimization at large scale. So it's really hard to compete with China on price. So focus on the quality, customer service, and your customer value proposition. Because in China, they can build anything, they can copy anything, they will do it very fast and very cheap. But what you can stand out as a brand, make it last longer, be a good quality, provide a very good customer service, and that's something that's actually hard to replicate. Providing repetitive customer service and deliver that value to customers.
So I'd say from a manufacturing standpoint, if you're doing small-scale manufacturing for a specialized product, then you can set up here first. And then when you go mass market, maybe consider China. For us especially, the biggest concern about China is IP protection. I personally can tell many stories about where either myself working in companies or my friends, all of us have China stories where something is basically then moved on, or instantly there's another competitor that has the same thing that's emanating from China. So be very cautious about IP protection. One thing that you can do is patent, and you can patent either in the EU or the US, someplace with a strong patent protection domain, and then move into China and make sure that all your IP is protected in some form. So be very cautious about that.
So that's kind of part of that in manufacturing. So the general question is IT versus non-IT. This presentation is not IT-based. That's for any kind of businesses. There are elements that are applicable to IT, but in general, having customer mindset approach that puts your customer first, that's across the industries. And even if it is B2B or B2C business, if it's a business to business or business to consumer, you need to understand your customers. So it doesn't matter if you're in the fashion industry, in the agribusiness, if you're selling equipment to agriculture, or if you're making a new clothing line, you need to understand your customers. So the methodology is applicable. There will be differences between industries and between segments. And specifically on manufacturing, again, depends on what kind of manufacturing it is and what kind of goods you're producing in China. There are IP, of course, issues, and you can try to protect yourself. If you can work with big partners in China who have good reputation, they're less likely to copy your product. And they might copy it, but they will sell it in China, but they will not go in your market. So if you have a good market share in Europe or US or other countries, they might still copy and sell it in China, but at least they won't go in your markets. So you will have your market share.
I'll take this one. What was the role of US government in Silicon Valley establishment as a high-tech ecosystem? Silicon Valley is not China. China is top-down, where government dictates something and then everybody makes it happen. Silicon Valley in particular is organic. It emerged from ground floor up. It was not a government initiative. However, the first phase of Silicon Valley in the 1950s, where early stage semiconductors, transistors, diodes, vacuum tubes, things along those lines, early computers, government was a strong customer. So the defense electronics industry, you remember we were in the Cold War, and Russia was launching satellites, and there was a lot of submarines and aircraft flying around that we had to monitor and govern. There were ICBMs that were being developed. A lot of the technology came from Silicon Valley, and so the Department of Defense was a strong customer, and a lot of companies grew out of that. But that was the start, and in the 60s, things changed into a largely consumer-based, and then computer-based, and then internet-based, and then mobile-based. So we've gone through a bunch of waves. Government's still there as a customer, and government does provide some basic research. So the Department of Energy, National Health Services provides a lot of research grants to Stanford and Berkeley and the other universities that feed into the technology ecosystem. But Silicon Valley was not government-driven.
I can take this one. So when you're thinking of going international, of course, from the operational perspective, you can establish the company, or you can maybe use some resellers, somebody who will resell your product. When you're thinking about supply chain and value chain, how you will deliver your product, there are different ways how you can sell it. Directly to customer, just you selling to someone, or through someone, through distributors, through resellers. So you need to understand, based on your product, how much money can you have, how much money can you make from the product that you can either share with distributors or resellers. Because if you're high on price sensitivity, so for example, it costs you money to build the product, then it'll cost you transport and use resellers, because you need to pay Walmart and Amazon to resell. So your margins need to be very good for the product in order to have a good profit and be able to sell the product. Because the markup that they will increase the price. And thinking online versus other channels, It's the same thing of analyzing how is this channel better than this one. If I sell online directly, that's great. I don't have a middleman, but I need to spend money on marketing and sales myself. At the same time, if you're using somebody's platform, you need to give them money. So your analysis needs to include how much money you would spend for this channel versus this one versus that one. And then make that analytical decision. Good thing is that we have a lot of data online that you can use to support you with those decisions.
Okay.
I think
I'm afraid we're out of
Yes.
time. So there's some great questions that are coming up here. So I just wanted to say that both Alina and I will be available all morning. We're going to be over here, I think.
Yes.
And if you want to have specific questions answered, we're happy to do so. But otherwise, what do you think?
Yes,
Thank you very
yes,
much.
thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you,
it's been
guys.
great.